I'd say get your timing right, because there's a lot of failed entrepreneurs who were actually brilliant and were a bit ahead of their time and didn't know how to adapt their idea for the marketplace. And they get discovered after their demise. But it's important to ensure that whatever the idea is that a student has when they're wanting to become an entrepreneur, is that they make sure that they have plugged into what I'll refer to as the zeitgeist of the time, which is what's the prevailing mood, what's the prevailing thoughts, what are people looking for, how is the world moving, is it pivoting towards your product or away from it? And I think this is really important, that knowing what's important to people and getting the timing right for that. And the other aspect of getting the timing right is knowing when to hold and when to fold. So especially when you're relatively inexperienced, this is something that you learn with experience. When do you stay the course and commit to your idea and to your business and to what's evolving in it, versus when do you pivot? When do you go, actually, great idea, but I now have to take a different track? And that is a learned skill, and that comes with experience. Because if you're not committed, if you're not determined, and you're not prepared to push through barriers, then you'll miss out. On the other hand, if you stick doggedly to an idea and it's not working, and you're not prepared to adapt and change, you miss out. So it's really finding that balance that is the dance between both of those, and that's a timing issue as well. When to hold, when to fold.
Get a mentor, definitely, and listen to a lot of advice. And probably if you are trying to start a new concept or a new brand or be an entrepreneur, get a risk manager, someone who's impartial to the business, or a third party that who's able to look at the business outside the box and to be able to understand the strengths, the weaknesses, the threats and the opportunities that are out there for your own business to enable your success.
I've always subscribed to under promise and over deliver. So for me, always doing more than what is expected has served me really well for 20 odd years in my career. Whether that be you're working for a big company, they've got expectations on you around KPIs that you might need to achieve a bonus or something like that. Whether it might be starting earlier than somebody or coming in later than somebody, or both potentially. But always doing that little bit more than what your employer or what your clients might expect has always served me really well. And certainly in the consulting area, being able to deliver more than expected has then led to either extensions of assignments or new assignments. Or where I've worked for a big company, a client has now popped up and sought me out because they remember that sort of regular over delivery from when I used to work in other companies. So that'd be my key piece of advice: over deliver.
So I think innovation, entrepreneurship has a bit of a stigma around Australia. And this is a bit of a broad brushstroke, but what I've seen is that entrepreneurship, what is that? We see a mid-20s person in a black t-shirt and jeans sitting in a co-working space building apps. Broad brushstroke, yes, but that's sort of the stigma of the entrepreneur. To me, entrepreneurship is about helping people. So if you want to follow your passion, you want to help people, entrepreneurship is what you should do. Because in the end, it's all about helping people. So advice then to students who want to pursue that pathway is that when you're young, and young meaning sort of, I'm old now, but sort of 20s, you've got time to fail, all right? And what you've got to overcome are those two things: failure and rejection. Because if you think you've got an idea and you want to take that pathway to entrepreneurship, you've got to realize that you might have 10 failures ahead of you. But those failures are a key part of that entrepreneurial journey. So the sooner you start, the better, because at some point you will succeed. So I think this comes back to doing startup mentoring for a long time as well, is that people tend to try to perfect everything before they take that step. Don't perfect it. Just take that step, try your idea with the market, and then rapidly evaluate what you should and shouldn't do. That's the best way of doing it.
So the advice I would give to students who would like to be an entrepreneur is to try and focus on something that you're passionate about, because it can really help in the long run, especially when times can get tough. The other advice I would give is to really surround yourself with like-minded people who are able to help you. And the last advice I would give is to really believe in yourself, because you can be surprised with how far you can go.
In terms of advice for students, I've loved being an entrepreneur, but I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's what I find. Entrepreneurs tend to be people that have a bit of a risk appetite, but the risk is quite funny, right? Like sometimes I've often thought about, would I go back and be an employee? But I've always felt as an entrepreneur, I've been in control of my own destiny. So yeah, there's a lot of setbacks, and there's been situations in business where, you know, everything's on the line and you're waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning. But it's that sort of feeling that, well, it's in my hands. I'm the one that can control where we go and how we move. And in some ways, I might even feel that if I was an employee of, say, a large corporation, I'm almost a victim of the decisions that large corporation might make for a whole variety of reasons. So I feel that as an entrepreneur, you're a lot more empowered, but you do need to be able, I think that key I was saying about resilience, you do need good coping skills. And I think particularly, you know, when times are tough like now with COVID, you know, something in some of the entrepreneurial groups we talk about is mental health, and having, you know, where we can sort of share that information, because, you know, it can be tough when, you know, you've got everything on the line. But you know, again, if you're creative, you've got that risk appetite, you've got that sort of motivation to make a difference. I think entrepreneurs for that person.
A lot of people have great ideas. I've just told you that I have a lot of ideas. Ideas are dime a dozen. There are ideas everywhere. That is not interesting. What is interesting is whether you can turn those ideas into something and into a business. So, you know, when people come to me, and, you know, I've not only started businesses, I've invested in businesses. A lot of people come to me and say, I've got the best idea. I'm going to create this amazing business. And my response is, that's great. Come back when you've moved beyond the idea phase. Everyone has ideas. Relatively few people turn those ideas into real businesses. So my advice would be keep hold of those ideas, go forward and do something with them, because it's the doing that is important. In the doing, you learn, you get feedback, you can improve, you can start to tell the story about whether or not it works, and that sets you then onto the pathway of becoming an entrepreneur. Before that, you're just a person like a lot of other persons who have interesting ideas. Harsh, but that's the reality.
If there's any advice that I can give to anybody that are in a classroom, whether they've got a disability or not, is don't listen to somebody that says you can't do it. If you do listen to somebody that says you can't do it, then smile, because that's motivation for you to show them, yes, I can. When I was younger, I wanted to be a motor mechanic. I sat in the classroom when the careers guidance came around from the government with all the information for all the other students. And he was about to go, and he said, what about me? I said, what about me? And he said, oh, what's your name? And I told him my name. And he said, oh, no, you don't need this. You don't need a job because you're disabled. And I just, what? So I took the first job that came. I went onto a farm. The farm built up my strength, my arm, my disability. It wasn't a disability. It's never been a disability. All it's been is a curve to learn how do I overcome that. Now I do fine jewelry with the same arm the teacher told me I couldn't draw, be an artist. So if someone says you can't, don't listen, but turn it around, smile, and in your mind, I can.